Breaking news. Countless people have been killed by this Wuhan super virus. According to the mainstream news, people working at cremation centers in Wuhan are saying bodies are being sent directly from hospitals without being properly identified or without being added to the official records. With all of the videos of dead bodies showing up right now, ladies and gentlemen, you can understand why they're burning these bodies, why they've locked down their entire, country, all the cities closed for business. This should shock everyone. And what we're about to reveal in this broadcast will give you better insight on what is actually going on. First and foremost, on the left-hand side here, you're looking at a comparison of the SARS virus outbreak versus the Wuhan virus outbreak. And as you can see, the Wuhan has gone completely vertical. We're also getting breaking news that 18 different school districts in Ohio have closed due to the flu, quote unquote. We're going to be following that story. 2 unconfirmed reports of coronavirus in Ohio. Now, they have tests that can rule out coronavirus that give results in 30 minutes. They've been sitting on 100 different cases for a week now. And we're going to be getting into what are they hiding and what is truly going on. But again, you see what's going on in China, and now supposedly they're burning bodies. You just have to wonder, how bad is it? On our website, stfnreport.com, we've just posted a couple of very important articles, and we're going to be getting into them. But one in particular, talking about this outbreak in Germany. On the German front, right now, it's gone from 0 to 7 cases, basically overnight, ladies and gentlemen. And we're going to read this article, and then we're going to read a couple paragraphs of this article, and then we're going to tell you what this means. But here goes. A business event in Munich set off a chain of coronavirus infections that began with an infected colleague from Shanghai who showed up with no symptoms during a trip to the German city. It's the largest reported cluster of cases caused by human-to-human spread outside of China. Very important. 5 employees, now 6, from a German auto parts supplier have been infected with the new coronavirus. So that's a massive outbreak of human-to-human transmission already. The cause of the massive pneumonia outbreak in China that the World Health Organization declared a global emergency yesterday. We could get into that. But don't worry about the video guy. He'll be back with us one of these days. In any case, continuing on with the articles. The infection appears to have been transmitted during the incubation period of the virus in a Shanghai that was in a Shanghai-based colleague. The woman attended meetings from January 19th to the 22nd near Munich with no signs or symptoms of infection, but she became unwell on her January 22nd flight back to China. She tested positive for the 2019 coronavirus 4 days later, doctors said in the New England Journal of Medicine on Thursday, which would have been yesterday. The cases show the difficulty of controlling the contagion using methods such as fever screening at airports. Almost 10,000 people across 20 countries have been confirmed, etc., etc. And let's see. The summary here is that in this case, what we find out is that carriers are highly contagious, even with no symptoms. And in this article, it goes on to say that the first German to get infected really only showed or only had like a sore throat and a cough for about 48 hours. He thought it was like the 48-hour flu, went back to work on Monday, felt just fine, And then other workers were starting to get sick. And when they tested him a few days after that, he still had the virus. He was still shedding the virus. And so it's quite possible, especially during this flu season, that people are running around out there with the case of the 48-hour flu, but in fact, they're carriers and spreading the coronavirus. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, if it's only a 48-hour flu, what's the big deal? And obviously, we're seeing the big deal in China because there's people, dropping dead everywhere, and everything is shut down. So while there's a widespread of spectrums, this portion of the spectrum is very disturbing. It's like, the sleeper cell. It's like the sniper out there, but really it's a stealth super spreader. And there's no telling how many of the cases are like this, but in any case, the numbers must be huge. And this is why we're seeing, this huge outbreak, because many people don't even know that they're carriers, and they're spreading it around for days and days and days, maybe weeks. And there really needs to be, some studies on how long does the virus stay with the person? How long are they contagious? But this is a really huge revelation, because it means that there's really no way to stop this virus, because healthy looking people will be, spreading it. And there's no telling how long this will stay in circulation. It may be a perpetual thing, ladies and gentlemen. And that means that, little by little, people are going to be, killed off by this virus, up to 250 million people, according to some estimates. Now, this situation in Munich is very disturbing, to say the least. There's also a huge outbreak about to happen, it looks like, in France. And there's a couple of cases that are rather disturbing. One with the central hospital out there that we talked about, where a coronavirus patient went undetected, went through the emergency room. So very classic super spreader case. And then there's another case of another doctor that we don't believe is in that or from that hospital, but was infected by a patient that went back to China and tested positive after arrival and called back to let the doctor know in France and the like. So there's no telling how many people, on business trips for a couple days, went around super spreading. But if we look at the outbreak in China, the first cases were reported in mid-December, early December, and it wasn't until mid-January that things started to flare up into this drop-dead syndrome. Now, there's certainly a specific type of person that's dropping dead, somebody with pre-existing conditions or the like, but there's enough of them where you're seeing so many videos of bodies, just laying on the streets. You'd think it was, the plague. And so what we can fully expect, and with high certainty and high probability, is that in 45 days from now, we're going to start seeing drop-dead syndrome in Europe and America. I would say the probability is slightly higher in Europe. Let's just say 80% probability that we're going to start seeing drop-dead syndrome in around 30 to 45 days in Europe. And let's say a 55% probability that we're going to see drop-dead syndrome in America within that same time period as well. Now, we're also learning that the death rate from this version of SARS is around 10% and not 2%. And the reason for that is that early on in outbreaks, we don't really get the true death toll because it takes, 2 or 3 weeks for the first patients to die, and, so on and so forth after every series of infections. And so the figures that we're getting right now of 200 some people really represents the people that were first infected 2 or 3 weeks ago, when the count was at about 1,000 or 2,000 people. So we're expecting to see a death rate very similar to SARS at 10 to 20%. And, figures could get real high real fast. We're also learning that there's a sequence in this SARS-like virus that is very similar to HIV. In fact, they call it a surprising discovery. And this is why they've been looking at HIV drugs for this virus. And this is all of a sudden starting to look like the movie Outbreak and the like, and they're definitely hiding, quite a bit of information here. But at this stage, I think everybody should prepare for the worst, because we can say with a high degree of certainty that this virus will work around just about every containment, strategy currently out there. And perhaps the only thing that may slow it down slightly is a full lockdown of society. And you can't expect that to last very long at all. Eventually people will be forced to go out there and confront this virus like the flu. And either everybody's going to be wearing masks, or eventually, 10% of the people on the planet are going to get killed off, and then it'll just kind of fade into history. This is, something that will be either proven or disproven with time. We may see, this virus just burn out and go away and the like, but it certainly doesn't look like it. Cases are exploding, and just seeing the way this thing took off in China, Wuhan was locked down, then the entire country was locked down. You just wouldn't see that unless this was some real serious kind of stuff. I mean, you could tell day one, it looked like this thing escaped from a lab, the way they were shutting everything down. They were taking this ultra seriously, and experts are skeptical whether even this, type of strategy will be anywhere near 100% effective. And in some cases, it may make it worse if you're trapped in a building with, shared ventilation, or, perhaps super spreaders in the elevator and the like. So it's hard to say exactly where this story goes from here. But obviously, the other countries don't want to talk about this aspect of the situation, because this is, an economic nightmare. This will make the Depression look like, like the happy days, ladies and gentlemen. If everything shuts down perpetually, everybody will be ordering their food from, Amazon and Uber delivered in, a hazmat suit for the rest of their lives, basically. And so this may change, world history as we know it. And, the fact that they're finding an HIV component to this SARS virus is rather strange and unusual. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to be thinking to themselves, this was engineered from a lab, this escaped a lab. And the original SARS, might have been that as well, because it looked like the original SARS had this HIV component to it. And people thought it was kind of surprising that, they'd be using HIV drugs for this virus. And, we'll have to explore that angle of the story more as it develops. Right now, 18 school districts in Ohio are shut down with very mysterious flu-like symptoms. I can't remember, ever hearing anything like that before. And even if there was the stomach flu, running around, never seen them shut down districts like that before. But, maybe, times have changed. Even the flu is much deadlier these days, thanks to EMF poisoning. No joke. Numerous research publications confirm that EMF radiation attacks the immune system, weakens your immune system so that you can't even fight off the common cold, or it's much more difficult. And this is becoming a killer in many more ways. And of course, people will be blaming the flu when they should really be blaming these cell towers and these death towers and the Wi-Fi and the like. And you might think that's kind of spooky, but it truly is what it appears to be: a eugenics program, a silent weapon. getting back to the big breaking news story, there's still tons of unconfirmed cases, even though a 30-minute kit test will let you know. That's, been around for quite some time, according to experts. So, why are they dragging their feet when it comes to talking about the true numbers? And are they actually testing people other than, new arrivals from China? Will they test this outbreak in these schools in Ohio? Will they start just taking samples from, the general population to see if coronavirus is circulating right now? Chances are it's circulating right now, floating around, and in many people, it may be very mild, and so they won't even know that it's around. But once it gets to the right demographic, all of a sudden we're going to start seeing people drop dead in the Western world, and that's certainly going to cause a huge panic. Tourism is going to shut down. Everything's going to shut down initially. And can the economy survive a shutdown, a quarantine of 30 days? I think they're going to try and avoid that, especially in an election year. And this may just turn out to be the biggest catastrophe anyone, has ever seen in politics. And, what would be the appropriate action? I mean, you're pretty much damned if you do, damned if you don't, ladies and gentlemen. And, they know the truth right now about this virus, and its outcome is inevitable. And at this stage, it's really like, what difference does it make? Might as well make a couple extra trillion and head for the hills while we can. So it's hard to say. I think people should be aware of the true nature of this virus. And, will it get worse as it begins to uptake genetic information from the local population? Does it begin in a more docile form and then become more virulent as time goes on, as it incorporates new features from going, from the laboratory to a local community, and then to another, community of a very, distinct makeup? We'll have to see. We'll have to see what they will release and what we will discover as time goes on. But right now, what we're watching are not only the numbers, which are going to go up, but as well as the new fronts that are going to open up in this war against the Wuhan supervirus. And of course, with super spreaders working behind the scenes like arsonists, this thing is certainly going to pick up steam in ways that people can't even imagine, to say the least. Not sure what happened to the video guy. But look, this is part of the eugenics program. This is part of the Agenda 21. They're poisoning the food, the air, the water, and the like. They're trying to ban the Bible. They're trying to, turn everything into Sodom and Gomorrah. And you're seeing, some of these, politicians with the mark of the beast, on them right now. We've talked about this in quite a few broadcasts, and we'll see if we can find some examples of that. But in any case, it truly is, like the end times out there. It's starting to, look that way. And people should be aware that we're not just up against, science and a physical world, but we're dealing with things beyond our full comprehension. And obviously, we're not alone on this planet, ladies and gentlemen. And quite certainly, demons walk amongst with us. And this is a demonic virus. It's out to kill indiscriminately, like some kind of lottery process. And, we could have a debate about that, But for the time being, we'll just stick with the facts. And at this stage, undoubtedly, the death rate is going to go up as well as the overall infections. We fully anticipate outbreaks in Europe and North America, to say the least. The extent, could vary, obviously. I'm not sure what the video guy is doing here, but there we go. Now, obviously, the extent of the outbreak is hard to determine at this stage, but if we had to forecast an outlook based on probability, we'd say that in 30 to 45 days, we're going to be looking at something perhaps slightly more mild than what's happening in China right now, in North America and Europe. But, there's a lot of variables here, and it's really hard to say. But again, if we had to forecast based on the information that we're looking at right now, these case studies and the like, we fully anticipate a worldwide pandemic with a 10% kill rate, and right now they're saying no vaccine for at least 2 years, except maybe for the rich and famous. But be on the lookout, folks. There's a new virus in town, and this is your new world now. We'll leave it there for this broadcast. Be sure to check out our video archives. Be sure to check out the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because it truly is happening out there right now, ladies and gentlemen. Till the next time, if you're listening to this, you are the resistance.